Short answer, yes. Yes, they are. Long answer, once upon a time in 1983, Nintendo released the Famicom, or NES, completely upending and reshaping the video game market at the time. But a contender would rise, a challenger to Nintendo's #1 spot. This challenger was NEC, who in 1987 released its answer to the NES, the PC Engine. 2 years later, it was released in North America, with some changes. Let's face it, PC Engine is a really dumb name that's just gonna confuse people in the West as to whether it's a PC or a console. So it was rebranded as the TurboGrafx 16. Put a pin in that name. The other change is that they made it bigger. Now, the TurboGrafx has all the same components inside that the PC Engine does, aside from the card reader being slightly different for region stuff. But they made the outer shell bigger because Americans will think bigger is better. Their words, not mine. Meanwhile, in Europe, any official plans to bring it there fell through, but apparently some Japan-imported consoles were distributed in grain markets in the UK and France. Now, some weirdo may have told you this was Hudson's very own console. That was only half true. It was a joint effort of Hudson Soft and NEC. NEC producing the hardware and Hudson making the software. Hudson's games had previously appeared on NEC's systems like the PC-88, so really Bomberman's technical native home is on NEC systems. The bit wars are raging, and while the NES is an 8-bit system, the PC Engine boasts 16-bit graphics. But the processor is still 8-bit, so does that count? It is technically an 8-bit system, but the graphics are 16-bit, so what generation of console do you count this toward? The name TurboGrafx 16 was criticized by some as false advertising since it is technically an 8-bit system. Side by side, this thing absolutely does pack more technical graphical capabilities than the NES, but once you actually have one, you do start to see some factors as to why this thing didn't sell well. Out of the box, it has only one controller port. You can't immediately play with your friends. You have to make sure you get a turbo tap with your TurboGrafx, otherwise Bomberman will be very sad. At least it goes up to 5 players with the tap. Also, natively it only has an RF output with mono sound, so you have to go and buy a turbo booster for your TurboGrafx for better sound and video. And then, if you want the full capability, you have to buy the CD add-on, which, hey, first console to run games off CDs, which is an achievement, but it sells for about twice as much as the base console. The used one I got here doesn't even work because these things kept breaking down, and I'm definitely starting to see why this thing didn't sell. The full package is crazy expensive. Sure enough, when looking, I quickly came across this video by Creative Cat Productions that essentially came to the same conclusion. It's a good watch, and you should check it out, as well as the guy's follow-up video. Bakuramon? Is that the reason it sold well in Japan at the start? It was made to compete with this thing, but by the time it was starting to make any headway, it was competing with these guys. So what can you do? Well, how's about instead of requiring people to get the base console and a whole bunch of add-ons, we put everything together in one system. Thus we get the PC Engine Duo, or Turbo Duo. Decent idea, but this still didn't boost sales. Hey, at least the CDs aren't region-locked. The regular game cards are. If you put a Japanese cart into an American console, you will get a whole lot of turquoise. But this Gate of Thunder 3-in-1 disc, released only in North America, will run in a Japanese PC Engine Duo without a hitch. Why did I get the 3-in-1 disc specifically? Oh, no reason. This thing was absolutely bodied by the two main contenders in market share, but it sold far, far better than any other consoles aside from those, giving it a pretty stable 3rd place, for what it's worth. Eventually, even Hudson realized this thing wasn't selling in the West, so one of the later Bomberman games here, Bomberman 94, was instead ported to the Sega Mega Drive/Genesis. Fairly shoddy port, all things considered. These background elements are supposed to be moving, but they're static here. And just look at all the slowdown in this area. Now that's what I call blast processing. It truly is as they say, the TurboGrafx does what Sega don't. Finally, in 94, NEC made a new console to succeed the PC Engine, the PC FX, and instructed Hudson very specifically not to make any mascot IP games for it, only anime games, which were successful in the previous PC Engine, but the PCFX flopped, to put it mildly, and never made it outside Japan. I'm really no hardware expert. All that stuff was just a giant segue to talk about this mega chonker here. So what the heck is this thing? Well, the Game Boy launched in 1989 and was a success. So how do you approach that market? How do you outdo the Game Boy? Well, compared to Nintendo's home console at the time, the Game Boy makes many sacrifices in technical capabilities. It's just black and white, processing power is not very high. You know, the PC Engine was already pretty small. What if we squeezed all the same inside parts into a portable console? Then we aren't making the same sacrifice. Since the graphical capabilities are our upside here, let's add an adjustable backlight so it's easier to see. And there we go, the PC Engine GT, or TurboExpress in North America. It straight up is a TurboGrafx, but portable, costing about 3 to 4 times as much as a Game Boy at launch, and running on 6 AA batteries that will be drained within about 2 hours of running this thing. And holy cow, this thing is thick! Here it is next to some other portable consoles for scale. This massive chunk weighs about as much as a Switch, while having an overall screen size much more comparable to a Game Boy. You could even get a TurboVision TV tuner for it to capture analog signals and watch TV on it, so that's a thing. Okay, on the one hand, it isn't a unique console. It runs the same games that your home console does, but portable, with all the same graphics. Minus some pretty severe burn-in on the screen. I mean, look at these after images. This white blob was on the screen and it was still burned into the screen for a good hour afterwards. On the other hand, it is not a unique console. It runs the same games that your home console already does, with the same graphics on a smaller screen. So where the Game Boy had a lot of unique games specifically made for it, the TurboExpress does not, so there's not much of a reason to get one. The only unique thing it has is certain games have a multiplayer mode for it, sometimes even a few co-op modes, and this time each player has their own screen instead of everyone being on the same screen. Not that it makes it better, it's just an extra capability. Good luck finding another person who actually has one and the same game as you and a TurboLink cable. Concerning the same graphics on a smaller screen, a portable screen is smaller than a TV in your living room, obviously, and even when accounting for holding the thing closer to your face, it still takes up a smaller portion of your field of view. To compensate for this, in general, character sprites and text in portable games are larger. They take up a larger portion of the screen compared to home console games, and since this is not a unique system with games made specifically for it, this size compensation is not made. It runs home console games on a smaller screen. I noticed when playing it can be pretty hard to tell what's going on unless you hold the darn thing right up against your nose, and the playing experience does suffer from this. That and the fact that these consoles were pretty prone to breaking, especially the sound. It sold not very well, despite being the most advanced portable gaming console on the market on a purely technical level. So, Bomberman and Bomberman 93 both have a multiplayer mode only accessible on these consoles, and I don't think any emulators exist that run these games in these TurboLink modes. I couldn't find any footage of these games being played in this mode, and was also curious as to whether the different regional consoles were cross-compatible, and especially whether the different regional releases of the games were cross-compatible. After all, I had just found out that Bomberman Land Touch 2's mini-games only work with the same regional cartridges. I asked around and many theorized they were cross-compatible, but it seemed nobody had actually tested this. Well then, I just had to go and buy both so I could test it out myself. And yes, they are. At least for the 2 games I tested. It was expensive to start documenting these modes, but hey, at least now we know where some of the supposedly unused music tracks in the game's files were used. As for what these modes are, Bomberman 90/PC Engine/TG16's TurboLink mode is basically just the regular battle mode on the home console, except portable now. It still has enemies in the stage, just like 2-player did on the home console, but now you get unique fail and lose music just for for the losing player. Being the second Bomberman battle mode after Bomber Boy, I have to compare the two, and sure enough, in Bomber Boy, the screen is centered on your character and scrolls across the map, whereas here it's always zoomed out, making it kinda difficult to see what's going on, but at least you see the whole stage. Meanwhile, Bomberman 93 should really offer more. On the home console, it has the kick and line bomb power-ups that were introduced in this game in the battle mode, and has 8 stages to choose from, but not so much in Turbo Link mode. We have only one stage, same as in TG16, but no enemies this time, and no kick or line bomb. Kinda underwhelming, but it was an aspect of Bomberman that apparently hadn't been documented yet, so there you go. I hope you enjoyed, and y'all have a nice day.